Well, hello and how are you? Welcome back to the Chat Batch here on the Geeknd. If you're new to this channel, then we make content on Star Wars, Marvel, and more. So if you haven't subscribed, then why not, you psycho? No, I'm sure you are actually. Very nice and normal, but please subscribe. Thank you. So on Mondays with the Chat Batch, we look back at the most recent episode of the Bad Batch, which specifically in this moment of time is episode 3 Replacements. And we do it with a guest as well as you in the live chat. So if you're in the live chat, let us know your thoughts on Replacements, episode 3 of the Bad Batch. And also if you're in the future watching on the replay, leave a comment and I will probably reply to it when I catch up in time. But before we bring in this week's guest and get started, let me just warn you that spoilers are coming for the Bad Batch episode 3 Replacements. So let's bring in our guest this evening in the UK. At least it's the evening. I think it's the afternoon where he is. He is Alex from Star Wars Explained, and I'm just remembering how to bring in a guest. There we go. He's in. Alex, good afternoon to you. How are you?
Good evening to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed the reenacting of the exchanging of pleasantries, which we did do off camera, but it's always nice just to create, recreate the moment, an illusion at least of politeness and, togetherness and warmth, because obviously before I go live, it was cold. We were quite aggressive to each other, really.
Yeah, this is all an act.
Yeah, this is all a pure act.
I cannot stand you.
The feeling's mutual, my friend. Actually, it's the first time we spoke in real time. We've been like, I suppose, pen pals up until now, which was nice. But it's equally nice, if not even nicer, to talk to you in the virtual flesh. So for anyone who doesn't know you and finds the title of your channel confusing and unclear, what's it about? What's Star Wars Explained about?
Yeah, so we explain Star Wars. No, we go through the books, the comics, the TV shows, the movies, whatever's coming out at the time, and we break it down, we review it, we talk about connections and stuff, and just kind of whatever I feel like, whatever I'm inspired to talk about based off of this new content. And if there's nothing new coming out, then I just try to scramble and find something from Legends or from older stuff that interests me, theories, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I suppose we just had a bit of a dry patch between The Mandalorian season 2 and the Bad Batch starting, but really now, Star Wars is the gift that keeps on giving for you. You're going to be in business for some time to come, I would say.
It's exciting and terrifying because, yeah, it's like we're going to have the Bad Batch and then that'll stop and maybe a little break and then Visions. And then after that, it's Book of Boba Fett. And then next year is going to be like Mando season 3. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, another season of Bad Batch, maybe. And that's just the stuff we know is coming out next year. There could be like Ahsoka. I don't know when that comes out, but it's probably going to just be a nonstop slew of Star Wars content from now on.
Do you ever fear getting Star Wars burnout? Because obviously you are a fan first and foremost, but it's your job. Star Wars is your job as well. And I remember when I first got into broadcasting and journalism, at the time I was a huge football fan. Ramble. I believe you guys call it soccer, but it's a ramble and they use predominantly it's football.
I started watching Ted Lasso, so I call it football now.
There we go. Thank you. Ted Lasso is educated. Educating the nation. That is good. Yeah, I remember I was a huge football fan, and the first job I got in radio was on a sports show, and having that all day talking about it, and then going home and going to like the bar and the pub with my mates, and they're talking about football. I kind of wanted to switch off from football because I'd had it all day in the office, if you like, and it took a while to get a balance. Obviously, Star Wars has been part of your life as a fan and as a business for a long time with the YouTube channel, but as you mentioned, we're heading to into new territory, really, with the amount of content that's going to be dropping. Do you fear, long way of asking the question I actually asked 2 minutes ago, which I'll ask again now, do you fear Star Wars burnout?
Not really. That's always the most exciting time, is when there's new stuff coming out. That's when it's easiest to do this job. I do think that sometimes, if I go out and hang, not that I've seen my friends all that much in the past year, but like, if you go hang out and they're all talking about the new Star Wars stuff too. And I'm like, okay, I just did this for 8 hours today. we can talk about something else, but I don't, that usually doesn't happen. Like, it's fun to talk about. So I think there's going to be plenty of variety, that it won't feel like, the same thing over and over and over again. I'm excited to see what new things they do, stepping further away from like the Skywalker saga.
Yeah, no, I think these are definitely exciting times that are coming our way for Star Wars, and you can also, flex your non-Star Wars muscles online. You've got your vlog channel, which I've linked to in the video description. Most people, I think everybody in the stream knows Star Wars Explained, but there's also your vlog channel as well. And I know you've been putting some of your Twitch streams on that vlog channel as well. You've been talking more about the MCU stuff that's been on Disney Plus recently as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that that's me flexing my muscles. Like, the show is actually called Explain It to Me. And it's like, we have friends who know far more about Marvel comics than I do. Cause like, I would say I'm a very casual Marvel fan. I love watching the shows and the movies, but I don't know the history of the comics or anything like that. So we have friends come in who are able to do to me what I do to everyone else, and just like over explain, like, here's where these people connect with, here are their origin stories in the comics and how it's different now. So that's always a lot of fun to do. We've done not just the MCU, but like Godzilla, Mortal Kombat, anything new that's coming out that I'm like, I want to watch this, but I don't know much about it.
So you're essentially your friends, they flex their muscles and you sit there and admire.
Exactly.
Right. Before we get into replacements, quick hello to Clays, I can see in there, David, Frogger, Neil, Zach, McLean, Anders, not Anders, that I learned recently, and Glenn, the Geeky Hippie, just dropped in to say that he's got an appointment, so he will miss this live, whatever it is. So I hope that appointment, whatever it is, goes well. Glenn, so before we get deep and dirty with the spoilers, in terms of replacements, how did you find the first 2 episodes of The Bad Batch?
I liked them more than I expected. It's kind of odd. Like, the show is almost exactly what I guessed it would be, but they're still finding ways to surprise me and excite me and keep me on the edge of my seat. I think it was probably the strongest opening for any of the Star Wars animated shows so far. But I'm also not like in a, this is the best Star Wars thing ever mode yet. But knowing the way that like the Clone Wars and Rebels grew, I have full faith that there's going to be episodes where I'm like, yeah, this is top tier Star Wars. And along the way, so far, I'm really enjoying it.
Good. Well, I'll also just say hello to Phil in the chat, Richard, Reeftan, and Matty Stokes as well. Okay, so let's move on to replacements. I did some very scientific polling on the YouTube community tab, and this is what the people that responded are thinking. Pretty strong. Top of the batch. Most people who responded, 41% of which loved this episode. 33% thought it was kind of okay. 7% didn't like it. 18% haven't seen it. Now I'm just going to scroll down to last week's episode, which was the first time I did a poll, and more responded, but more thought it was great. But also, what I'm seeing a difference here is with replacements. Less thought it was great, more thought it was okay. There's less of a gap between loved it and thought it was okay. I seem to be finding consistently about 20% of people haven't seen The Bad Batch yet. So it seems to be, generally being well received across the board so far. But let's get into the sort of details of it. There was a couple of comments. Sorry, I'm learning StreamYards as I go along. 3 months later, still in educational mode. A couple of comments from Daniel Rigger here. Dark, David Milano. The flamethrower comes out, and I turn to my fiance and say, a kid's show. And I think that's certainly my biggest takeaway as well from this episode. It was a grim episode. There was an execution, which was kind of horrific. With the insurgents. The dark comments there from Daniel and David. My question is this really a kid show?
I think not. I mean, I find it to be accessible to kids. Like, it's not horribly violent, but sometimes the off-screen stuff feels even worse. But I think that they probably made this with Clone Wars fans in mind, the people who grew up watching the Clone Wars when it was first on, starting in 2008. And now we're 13 years later. So like, they're adults now. I think that they're fully making this show mostly for that audience, that it's like, hey, we just finished the Clone Wars season 7, and this is a clear continuation of that. If you were a fan of the Clone Wars and you want more and you want to keep it like aging up with you, it's something that I think you can watch with a younger audience, probably not too young, because it does get scary. It's not like Star Wars Resistance young, but 13-year-old around there, I think that's probably all right.
I suppose Star Wars is in that kind of that perhaps unique place. There's not too many franchises in this place where they have so many different generations of fans. You can't tailor everything you make to every fan, in terms of their taste and their what's suitable for them, essentially. So I suppose there will be some more definitely kids orientated stuff coming out. We've got Droids, haven't we, at some point, right. And Visions. Is Visions the anime cartoon?
That comes out sometime in the fall, I think. They haven't set a release date for that yet.
But the Bad Batch, probably not for kids, is what we've decided on. But I like the contrast we had, though, between the Bad Batch's, I suppose, more gentle nature, that kind of welcoming, warm vibe with Omega that they have, contrasted with that cold, dark, grim nastiness of Crosshair with his new pals. So even though it was a dark episode, there were some lighter moments in it.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty well balanced, because you would cut to Crosshair, and yeah, it was pretty grim and rough. But Omega's storyline still had the elements. It was literally dark. She was in a cave, but it was far more lighthearted, uplifting. The end with Wrecker. I mean, come on, you gotta love that.
Yeah, and it was a classic. Even in the dark and dingy cave, it was a classic, Star Wars creature encounter, I suppose. So it had that kind of that feeling of familiarity. But yeah, Wrecker's a character that because I've come to the animation side of it quite late. I didn't mention this to you beforehand. I really binged the Clone Wars up until the Bad Batch episode 1, and I didn't get to finish Clone Wars season 7. In the end, I just watched the first 4 episodes, which of course were the Bad Batch arc, and I'll have to come back to the Clone Wars probably after the Bad Batch. In those 4 episodes, to be honest, I didn't watch those 4 episodes. If I didn't know there was going to be a Bad Batch series coming, I wouldn't have watched those 4 episodes and thought, yeah, we need a series about these guys. None of them did much for me. But Wrecker annoyed me, to be honest. However, in the Bad Batch, he's growing on me. He's really growing on me, Uncle Wrecker.
You're in the same situation as Molly, where I've been a Wrecker fan from day one. I want that on the record. The second I saw him shoulder pressing that Gonk droid, I was like, yes, he's my Bad Batch favorite. And I still think he is. But yes, I think that seemed to be the reaction across the board when they were like, the next series is the Bad Batch. And everyone was like, really? Them? Okay. But I think we've learned to trust the animation department by this point. And yeah, so far, they immediately in that first episode took all of these very extreme, basically caricatures, and then turned them into real people. I mean, I don't think I could tell you anything about Hunter based off of the Clone Wars arc. To me, I was like, he's just a clone with a face tattoo. And now he is one of there's only 4 of them, or 5, but I would say he is pretty close to Wrecker as my favorite one. I really like everything they're doing with him. They fleshed them out so quickly and so well. I've been impressed.
I agree in terms of Wrecker and Hunter. I still think there's more work to be done in terms of taking us on more of a dramatic kind of ride of character development with the Bad Batchers. Because at the moment, for me, the main hook is the really fascinating transition from Republic to Empire. So everything that's happening around what the Bad Batch are up to is kind of what's hooking me in at the moment. And I suppose it should be the Bad Batch that are hooking me in. They should be the hook. But I imagine it will get me eventually. You know, Hunter's definitely becoming more interesting. Amiga is interesting and really likable. And like I said, Wrecker's growing me already. And I think we've got about 39 episodes still to go. So I think there's plenty of time personally for them all to grow on me.
Well, that's you say the stuff about like the Empire and the surrounding things, and that's, I think, a lot of times when people hear they're doing a Bad Batch show or they're gonna do. I remember when there were rumors of like a Jabba the Hutt movie. When you hear it boiled down to just the characters the story is going to surround, you're like, I'm not sure about that. But then they release like the description for the series, and it says it's about clones finding their place after their purpose has been served, and now they need a new purpose. And I'm like, okay, that's a really interesting thing to explore. And who knows if that Jabba the Hutt rumor was true or not, but I remember hearing the rumors and being like, ugh, we don't need a Jabba the Hutt movie. Although when you step away from it and you say like, okay, well, it's probably not a Jabba the Hutt movie. It's more about the criminal underworld and like kind of what Solo was starting to get into. Then it starts to become a little more interesting, like a gangster movie in Star Wars. But I think people just tend to hear things like The Bad Batch because that's the title of the show, obviously. and they're like, I don't know about these 4 characters, when in reality, the show is about so much more.
Yeah, you know you've made it as a Star Wars character when there's a spin-off movie rumor that's started about you. Jabba's definitely in that territory. Whatever you said at 7:13 p.m., 2:13 p.m. your time, Clay says, well said, Alex. So whatever it was back then, well said you. Going back to that poll again, I'm obsessed with this poll. Very proud of it. There's a comment from Frogger, who I know is in the live chat, referring to the foreshadowing with, now I struggle to say the Cameonians. How do you say it? Cameonians. Is that okay?
I say Kaminoans.
Kaminoans. I'm going with you. You are Star Wars
Explained. Dexter Jetster says Kaminoans. So, you know, whatever works.
I'm going with you over Dexter. So he's referring to. No, I'm not a gamer, but I can definitely see the foreshadowing here. However, I can't speak for the Battlefront 2 reference here, but there's obviously something bubbling, isn't there, with the the species that we just spoke about. There's something going on because they in this episode we get a little. They open the door. They lift a little bit on it, referring to the next phase and Django's genetic material degrading. Mm-hmm. Have you been thinking much about this? Theories? I just can't talk tonight. Have you been coming up with any theories of your own on this? What direction do you think they're going in?
I think that they are absolutely going to lead to a Camino uprising, or I won't say 100%, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Battlefront 2, there was a part of the campaign, I think, where the Kaminoans were making clones because they were sick of being taken over by the Empire and controlled by the Empire. So they made some new clones that could fight against stormtroopers, but the Empire caught wind of it, sent the 501st in and shut it all down. I'm not going to expect it all to play out like that, but I do love the idea of, and it feels like they're foreshadowing that Camino is not happy. They're up to something. And, you know, it's odd that we don't really see many clones or Kaminoans after the Clone Wars ends. So what happened to them? And I think we might get those answers. I think it could also tie into stuff like The Mandalorian or even The Rise of Skywalker, where, you know, if we wiped out all of the all of the cloners and now we don't have any experts, and that's why the Empire is struggling so hard when we see those messed up clones in The Mandalorian or whatever happened to Palpatine in The Rise of Skywalker. Like, it could all kind of tie together, and I think that's a nice little bow on that cloning package.
And do you think, because obviously there's something to Amiga, that there's going to be some sort of reveal at some point. We're going to learn more about her purpose, I suppose. Do you think she's the experiment, the next phase that they were referring to?
I want to guess that's the case, but I could see her being a red herring as well. I mean, I think that, there's the theory that she's force sensitive. I think that makes a lot of sense based on what we've seen so far. And it would also, again, tie into, I think, Palpatine trying to create force sensitive clones in The Mandalorian, The Rise of Skywalker, and all that. But I've also seen the theory that she is just like a mimic, so to speak, that she's able to see a skill and immediately pick it up. So I think she could be that one clone. They say something like, after all, we only need one of them. And you assume it's Omega. But I wonder if they're like playing that assumption up for us, and then it'll turn out that they really need Tech or Echo or one of the others for some reason.
Yeah, because I do get easily confused. So I might have missed something here, but if it's not Omega they necessarily need, if it's just one of the Bad Batch that they need, then they've got one right under their noses, haven't they? With Crosshair. Crosshair's there.
But also, like, I mean, his skill is just that he can shoot slightly better. I don't know.
That's good though for soldiers.
Oh yeah, it's great. Or do
they need a bit of all of them? Do they need a bit of all of them? Maybe.
I mean, though they said they only needed one, which it's still Omega makes the most sense, because I've also seen the theory that she is like a combination of all of them, that she has all of their enhancements combined into one. So that makes sense as to why they would only need her, but who knows at this point.
I don't have that many notes from this episode, to be honest. I think my top takeaway from this series in general so far is the wonderful work this series has been doing for the reputation and the appreciation, therefore, of gonk droids. Who knew they were so versatile? They've been workout equipment, and now they've been a bed in the most recent episode, and not to forget their actual kind of initial function on this planet, or the many planets, is to like walk around charging things. That's my main takeaway so far from the Bad Batch. Just wanted to put that out there, to be honest. And the second note I have here from this episode in particular, and again, I always miss things. I don't do, Easter egg videos, breakdowns, because I'm just not very good. I have to watch things a number of times, and I would release those aforementioned style of videos way after that episode's expired. But I did notice that Wrecker seemed to have a persistent headache. I was sort of worried for him, but then I started to wonder, is there something in this, or does he just need to man up, clone up? Because it never got solved. He never cured the headache.
No, I think that's more terrible foreshadowing. I think he hit his head where the chip is, and they're going to show us that the chips need to be taken out. That just because they didn't activate when Order 66 happened doesn't mean that they can't activate later. So Wrecker is kind of the worst choice to have his chip go off, because he's the strongest, the most formidable, but he's also such a sweetheart now, and it would just be sad for him to be turned into like a mindless murder machine. But I'm telling myself not to worry, because Tech is making that device to find their chips. Like, I'm sure something will happen, but they'll get Wrecker under control. They'll get his chip out. Everything's going to be fine.
I hope so, because like I said, Wrecker's the one that's, along with Hunter, Wrecker's the one that's grown on me the most. But they're building up to something, and obviously there is going to be some kind of, I imagine, big dramatic reunion between the guys and Crosshair at some point. I just have a terrible feeling that somebody is going to get hurt. And I don't go on the socials much these days, but I make the odd cameo appearance. And when I log into my personal account, it's all Brexit based doom and gloom. When I log into the Geeknd account, it's mostly occasional Star Wars fan drama that I don't understand, or it's retweets of things that I enjoy. And I noticed that someone had retweeted something. I think the composer for the Bad Batch had tweeted that they were working on the final episode, and it brought, it was a tearjerker for them in the studio.
Yeah, that's scary.
I hope it's not Wrecker. I hope, just take some paracetamol and it will all be okay.
Hopefully it's just emotional. It's like a happy emotional and not a sad emotional.
Yeah, I hope so. We've been through too many emotions in the last year and a bit in the real world. Give us some nice,
Mhm.
gentle escapism, please, at least for me. And the Battlefront game I referenced earlier, I think I made a mistake. David here saying the game in reference is the original Battlefront 2 from 2005. Hello, Crystal Customs and Star Wars Meg as well, my friend. Zach, I don't know. I think we said hello to you earlier, Zach, but there's another hello. Hello to you. What about the Crosshair and his new friends, his new comrades, of
Friends,
which
sure.
one didn't make it out alive. There's a lot of talk that this is the beginning of the Death Trooper program. Do you buy that? Has that been confirmed? Or is that just sort of fan speculation at the moment?
I think it's just fan speculation. I would say there's some solid evidence for it. I mean, they're all like elite soldiers already. They're tall, they're slender, they're wearing similar armor. It's not full on black, but it's dark. It's got the green visor. And thematically, I like that idea that they almost start with the Death Trooper, and they're like, okay, we got this process down of we took a clone, he trained up these soldiers, and they're very good, and then they'll set up like these standards and regulations on how to train new troopers, but they're not going to have that same kind of oversight. It seems like a very imperial thing to be like, look, this can work if we put in the time and effort, but then we're going to ignore it now, and it's just recruit as many people as we can, and they don't need training, they're just cannon fodder anyway. So I kind of like the idea that maybe Death Troopers were the start of the Stormtrooper program, and then they just kind of like let it all fall apart.
Yeah, standards surely slipped.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we're going to see that full transition then from sharpshooting Death Troopers to, like, let's just say useless door hitting Stormtroopers?
Maybe. I don't think they're going to go into as much detail as I was just talking about, even though that wasn't that much. I kind of think it'll just, happen. We'll see the transition from clone armor to Stormtrooper armor, and I wonder if it'll happen mostly off screen, but it depends on how much they want to get into the weeds in this show. And they've gone into more detail than I thought they would already.
Yeah, I suppose they've got a long way to go on this series still. And it's not a limited run. There's going to be another series, isn't there?
I don't think they've said that. They certainly alluded to it in an interview. It's like, we'd love to tell more stories with these characters, but we'll wait and see. And I'm like, okay, they probably already are working on season 2 the way animation goes. And my assumption is that we'll get season 2 next year.
Frogger has a theory on Wrecker's headache. Frogger has seen a theory online, so perhaps not Frogger's own theory, that Wrecker faked the headache to stay on the ship and make that room for Omega. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe. That's nice. That's a bit more reassuring. David, meanwhile, I think it has to be Wrecker's inhibitor chip. I agree with Alex here. They definitely need to be working towards removing all of their chips. That does seem to be the direction that this series is going in. And hello to Turtle. Welcome.
Hey, Turtle.
Yeah. So overall, then, what are your what were your overall thoughts on this episode, and what would you score it? What would you give it? Marks out of 10 wise, and let us know in the chat as well. Give us your scores out of 10 for episode 3 of the Bad Batch.
I think my gut says 8. Like, I liked this one a lot. I liked it more than 2 because it's starting to. If I could criticize the first couple episodes, it would be that, man, this is a very similar setup to The Mandalorian, but I think it's already starting to diverge, and I was seeing that in this episode. So I really enjoyed that. The darker stuff took me by surprise, but I also really liked the lighthearted stuff. So yeah, I thought this was a really great episode. I'll go 8.
So you preferred it to episode 2. What
I did.
Is episode 1 your favorite so far then? Is that what you're landing on?
I think I'd probably rank it an 8 as well. I think I liked 3 and 1 pretty even. And 2, I liked 2. I'd give it a 7, I guess, which even feels a little low. But I do think that I liked 1 and 3 more.
Yeah, I gave episode 1. I think I gave it a 7. It's on the record because I said it on something on YouTube. I gave episode 2 a 6.5, and keep your scores coming in the chat. I'm going to come over to them in a moment when we wrap up. One of my sort of concerns that I feel like you referenced this as well, was that they were maybe copying, pasting that winning Mandalorian formula of the child with Din, to Omega and Hunter. But I feel like that has now been almost nipped in the bud. The fact that she has outright made that decision to go with the Bad Batch. She made that in episode 2. So there's not the kind of, do we give her up? Do we give him up? Grogu, etc. So that was something that was sort of bugging me. Were they just, copying and pasting again a winning formula, which, I'm not going to brand the production team of the Bad Batch as such, but in the industry in general, people do get lazy.
I would say, to be fair, though, it's not even really the Mandalorian that started that formula. I mean, Ahsoka and Anakin, they've always had kind of like this older character mentoring a younger character dynamic in the Star Wars animation department. So Anakin, Ahsoka, Kanan and Ezra. Now we've got Hunter or the entire Bad Batch and Omega. So it's a formula that works. And even though we were saying like, this isn't exactly made for kids, Omega is still kind of that access point for a younger audience to get into Star Wars maybe for the first time.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Right, let's look at some of the scores in the chat. Clays, we've got an 8 from Clays, so a nice strong score there. A 7 out of 10 from Reef Tan, and a 9.69 from Star Wars Meg. That is the highest score so far. Anyone got a 9.7? 8.5 from Richard, which is the same score as David. So we've got a lot of high scores here. 9 from Michael, 8.5 from Chad Campbell, who usually I call him Chad the Stopwatch Campbell because he tries to keep me to time and fails miserably. But congratulations on your score giving there, Chad. And David would be willing to upgrade to a 10 if Vader shows up. Do you think there's a surprise for us in terms of cameos down the line?
I'm sure there are. And at this point, Vader wouldn't even be a surprise to me. Like, they already made the Vader model. We've seen the Stormtrooper model from the final scenes of the Clone Wars. So it's like they have that asset made. That is something I think that I've been saying stuff like, okay, Dryden Voss is going to be in this show because there's no way they made that model just for a little cameo in the Clone Wars. I can see them making the Darth Vader model just for the Clone Wars, but also it's like, it's the Empire. It's the rise of the Empire era. He's gonna appear. Vader's gonna show up at some point.
Well, looks like David will be upgrading to a 10 then. Phil is keeping his cards close to his chest. No scores, but he would say that episode 1 has been his favorite so far. 8 out of 10 from Jane. We've got an 8. 8 for Crosshair, giving us the most Empire moment in years. Henry, 9 out of 10. And Phil's come. He's come out now. He's off that fence. 8 out of 10. And I think that is all the scores. So all pretty high. The highest being Star Wars Meg's 9.69. I think I've got the lowest score then because I gave episode 2 a 6.5. And I didn't prefer this to episode 2. I'm thinking, for me, another 6.5. But I just want to put this out there again. I said this last week. 5 is average. So it's above average at 6.5. That's good. In my book, that's good. I've had people jumping on me. 6.5, that's so low. It's not. 5 is average. 6.5 is nicely, comfortably above average. But I'm just loving all of the, really loving. I would give 8 or 9 out of 10 for all of the transitioning, that we're seeing between the Republic and the Empire, like I said earlier, more grandly with the kind of the more slow transitioning from the clones into what we know eventually will be the Stormtroopers. But also in episode 2, I really like the kind of how it's affecting, the little man, if you like, the little alien, if you like, with the, the civil liberties being attacked, if you like, in episode 2. Struggling to get on a shuttle for transport to get off a planet, something that presumably changed overnight for the people that lived on that planet. So I've been enjoying all of that, and again, that's the hook for me right now, not the Bad Batch themselves. Although I'm definitely warming a lot to Wrecker and Hunter. So yeah, I think I'm just looking for them to grow on me more, and to go more down that kind of path of dramatic change that I mentioned earlier, which I think will come, early days, episode 3, what is there, 14
right.
or so. And, Hunter is becoming more interesting. And like I said, Wrecker is no longer annoying for me. And Crosshair, he's vile. He would, I imagine, it was a long time ago when I was a child, but I imagine he would be, very terrifying for a child. He's also, I think, very interesting. There's a lot of foreshadowing going on around him in terms of setting up, I suppose, some sort of finale between him and the Bad Batch, where he might have a choice to make, I guess, and perhaps that emotional showdown as well, which the composer hinted towards. So I'm just defending my score here, but I'm sticking to a 6.5. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's fine. And I agree with Chad in the chat, because I think that's where the disconnect comes is, if you get a 65 on a test, that's not good. But it also makes sense that a 5 is a very just, I have no strong feelings either way about this. And then once you hit the 4s and 3s, you're like, okay, I didn't like this episode. And anything above a 5 is like, I enjoyed it.
I see where you're both coming from, but what you and Chad are missing here is that I would consider D a very good grade when I was at school anyway. That was a triumph. So once again, 65%, 6.5, pretty darn good. I actually did get a few Ds, and I was quite proud of them. So anyway, Alex, thank you very much for joining me. The first time we've spoken in person. I guess we'll go back to being pen pals for a while now, and maybe we'll talk again one day. Who knows?
I hope so. I remember. I was going to say, I remember you were in Atlanta doing a Stranger Things shoot, or you're looking at locations that Stranger Things filmed at. And I was like, I can't believe you were that close to me and we didn't know it.
Yeah, man, because also I was on my own. I didn't know Atlanta, which was okay. I've got a phone to get me around and to keep me company. But I hate driving. I've lived in London for 15 years. It's a huge, heavy public transport city. You don't really need to drive. I choose not to drive. Don't need to drive in London. Hate driving. And in the States, you kind of, well, for the Stranger Things locations particularly, I needed to drive. So I remember you getting in touch with me afterwards, thanks, saying that you would have totally driven me around to all those places.
Yeah, but I went to that mall before they shut it down back in the day.
Really? I will, maybe one day I will return. I was back in the day when I could when I could work and travel abroad to events that I was working at in America and other countries. I used to be in the States quite a lot, and we were actually working just outside Atlanta. We had a couple of days off at the end before the flight home, so I sort of went into the city and did that myself. Nobody on the team seemed to want to follow me, but I didn't know back then that that's like 3 years ago now. I didn't know back then that you were based around there. But next time you're going to regret bringing this up, because I will get in touch and I will demand that you chauffeur me around your fair city.
You got it.
Thank you very much. Right. I'm just going to thank. Oh, there it is. Thank you, all Patreon members, obviously including those that you can see there on the slate. It's finally working. So, I think you know who he is, but if you don't, I've linked to the Star Wars Explained YouTube channel in the video description, and Twitter, and also to Alex's vlog channel for sort of non-Star Wars content, if you want to go and check that out as well. So thank you, everybody in the chat. Matthew saying thank you to you there. Also Frogger as well. I'm doing that thing where I'm not reading messages really, and I'm just putting them up, which gets me in trouble quite often, but I trust Star Wars, Meg. I trust Frogger and Matt. Right, so I'll say goodbye. I'm Alex. Now you've probably realized I'm terrible at ending these streams. I want someone else to hang up. You know, it's that kind of like, no, you hang up moment. No, you hang up. So I'm sorry that you're having to sit through this, but thank you to everybody, including David and Star Wars Podcast. I'm going to hang up now. Okay. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for joining.